Okay, so I did my project on juvenile delinquency, and the two countries that I compared were Peru and Estonia. The reason why I chose this subject was because I work with minors, and also because I have a juvenile delinquent god sister who is having trouble with the law in school. So I just wanted to do research and see how other teens are doing in other countries. And the reason why I chose Peru is because I just know from watching the news that they have a lot of gang violence with the juveniles out there. And then I just chose Estonia because I don't know much about Estonia, so I just thought I would do some research and see how life is out there. So let's see some statistics and what's going on in both of these countries with the juveniles. So first, I'm going to start off with definitions that people of different professions have for juvenile delinquency. First, criminologists believe that juvenile delinquency encompasses all public wrongs committed by young people between the ages of 12 and 13. Sociologists believe that it covers a multitude of different violations of legal and social norms from minor to serious crimes committed by juveniles. Merriam-Webster, they believe that juvenile delinquency is conduct by a juvenile characterized by antisocial behavior that is beyond parental control and subject to legal action. And then just normal people, they believe that sometimes it's just a secondary response to poverty, or they think that it's some evil spirits going on in these children, or they just think it's abnormal behavior and they need some psychiatric help. So there's a few perspectives of how different people view juvenile delinquency. So in Peru, of course, they have a lot of juvenile delinquency out there because they're a poorer country. But they have also been on the increase with their problems. It has actually increased by 28.8%. And most of this can be accounted for by the gangs or pandillas, which they're called in Peru. They cause a lot of violence in the communities out there, and actually they promote a lot of fear. The residents are actually fearful of these young gangs that have the age range from as low as 7 to 30, and they have about 10 to 100 people in each gang. So they do have a big influence in the community. One of the gangs that I came across was the Boca Negra Wolves, and they are a group of preteens and teenagers, and they are known for robbing people, selling drugs, having guns, and even murder. So they are very dangerous, and even though they're so young, they're very dangerous and have a big influence on the community in a negative way. Also, another gang is the Piranhas, and this is a group of homeless boys typically, and they hang out in the marketplace, and they usually rob people because they're in need of money. So they usually, if they see somebody walking by themselves, they will just go and attack the person, ripping their clothes, checking their shoes, checking their socks just to find the money. But surprisingly, they do not hurt anybody. I've seen videos, they don't hurt the people. It looks like they are, but they really aren't. So that's amazing to me. But yeah, they just know what they know. They know that they need food, so they just go and they rob people so they can get what they need. So yeah, that's about it. I didn't find much about Peru, but I know that there is a lot of gang violence, and they do a lot of robbing and drug use out there. Now, in Estonia, their biggest crime is using drugs. They do have some violence and robbery, but the main thing out there is drugs with the juveniles. And surprisingly, they start as young as 8 using different type of hallucinogens such as LSD. They use ecstasy, they use amphetamines, they even use homemade drugs out there, and it's just a popular thing out there for them to do in their free time is to use drugs. Also, a lot of their behavior is displayed at school. So there, at least 1 out of 3 kids are victims of bullying, robbery, or assault. Also, out in Estonia, they just had their first school shooting. A boy, he was arrested for shooting his teacher, who he claimed was calling him names and things. So he went and stole his dad's revolver and came back and killed him. So it's not just in Peru where there's violence, or even the United States, but now it's trickling down to Estonia as well. And also at school, they carry knives and chains and any type of weapons so they can assault people and steal money. But most of the time, they steal money for drugs. So in Peru, it's more about survival and about getting things that they need. But in Estonia, it's more of just being bored, pretty much. Like, they aren't as they're not living in as much poverty out there, so they usually just do things out of boredom, and they do things because they want to fit in out there. So now I'm gonna discuss some of the problems that arise from juvenile delinquency. So, of course, they are at risk of being put in jail, but also, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in Estonia, the girls, even though prostitution is legal out there, the young minors are affiliated with prostitution a lot out there. So, yeah, I forgot to mention that. But, yeah, so from these activities, they can, of course, get contract the STD, or they can also get pregnant, and ultimately, if they have a drug overdose or they try to assault the wrong person, they can end up dead. So that is another reason why juvenile delinquency is a problem, because they don't realize the consequences that they can face. But there are some reasons why they do these things. Of course, there's always a cause and an effect. So, some of the reasons that I came up with were low self-esteem, especially with prostitution. They just don't have any self-esteem, and so they go out there and sell their body so they can get money, or they might just be doing it for another man to please him. So that's a big issue. Also, the media, they make it seem like drugs are okay, so they tend to watch TV and they get influenced by the media. Also, they might be exploited by other drug dealers, so other drug dealers often bribe them so they can get their drugs for free. So they have the younger kids sell the drugs for them, and then they give the minors drugs for free. Also, another one is influence from family members. So oftentimes, especially in Estonia, older brothers or parents are engaging in criminal activities such as drug use, or they might even commit robbery in front of the kids, so they tend to pick up on things that they see other people do. And also, just a dysfunctional family setting can cause teens to go out and just try to find some sense of balance or sense of belonging, and they just end up doing the wrong things just to fit in. So, in both of the countries, they have tried to come up with different solutions to solve the problem of juvenile delinquency. Some work and some don't, but it's good to know that there are efforts being made to stop the problem. So, of course, they do use jail and other detentional facilities to try to correct the behavior. Also, the police, they try to monitor the gangs more and just keep an eye on them, and if they see them do anything, they can arrest them, of course. But oftentimes this has an adverse, yeah, so sorry, but oftentimes this has an adverse effect on the kids and actually makes the gangs just get smarter with what they're doing with their criminal activity, and they just get closer and closer, and it doesn't really help. Another initiative that they've implemented is youth sports and community programs, but oftentimes they're passive and they're not like the kids who need the most don't get to participate in the programs because they're not aware of them. So most of the time that doesn't work as a solution either because it's not being promoted to the right people. Also, there's preventative programs at school to teach about the effects that come from delinquent behavior, and also like STDs and things that can arise from just not being careful and not thinking about their actions. But most of the time, there's not enough money for these programs, so they don't last very long, or they just don't even get implemented into the schools or community at all. Another thing that they have tried is shelters, especially for the kids in Peru who are homeless. They are trying to build shelters and have alternative schools for them, and those are somewhat effective, but still there's not much funding for those as well. And then another great idea that they've come up with is family counseling. So that has had some pretty good results from that, but nothing's perfect and nothing is always available to everybody who is in need. So that's just where the problem arises, is getting everyone to be aware of the problem and getting everyone to try to prevent the problem. So that's all I have for that. It was very interesting researching this topic because I am familiar with what goes on, but I just didn't know how young they started and to the extent that it was. Like, I did not know that teenagers were murdering people. I didn't know that they were doing certain things that they're doing out there. So it was interesting to see the different ways of juvenile delinquency in each country. So in Peru, it was more violence and more attributed to poverty, but in Estonia, it was more of dysfunctional families and just pretty much being bored and wanting to be a part of a group or something. So it does show that kids do need love, and that's the main thing I think that a lot of the programs are missing, is that really they're not being empathetic, and they're not really showing real love to the kids. So that's just my take on it, and I hope you liked it. Thanks.